When we bought the house near the lake, I told myself it felt peaceful in the way quiet places usually do when you're tired of cities. The realtor used words like still and untouched, and I remember thinking those were good qualities for a place meant to raise a family, somewhere life could finally slow down without feeling empty. The house sat slightly back from the water, with tall windows facing the lake, and a narrow line of trees wrapping around the yard, like a fence that didn't quite close. On the day we moved in, the surface of the lake was so smooth it reflected the sky perfectly, and for a moment, it felt like we had bought something rare, something preserved. My husband loved it immediately. The children ran from room to room, choosing bedrooms, laughing, already imagining where their things would go. Our dog, Milo, stayed close to me instead, his tail low but wagging, as if he hadn't decided yet how to feel about the place. I noticed it that first evening. While unpacking in the kitchen, Milo stood in the doorway to the hallway, staring into the empty space near the coat closet. His ears were stiff, his body angled away, like he wanted distance, but didn't want to turn his back. I called his name once, then again. He didn't respond. When I walked toward him, he moved aside quickly, avoiding the spot he had been watching. I remember laughing it off, telling myself animals react strangely to new spaces, to unfamiliar smells, unfamiliar sounds, unfamiliar shadows. That was my favorite explanation back, when explanations still worked. The first night passed quietly, too quietly maybe. The house made no settling sounds, no unfamiliar creaks. It felt as though it was holding its breath. I slept lightly, waking often, but nothing happened. The second day was when I realized the quiet only existed when we were home. We went into town for groceries that afternoon, gone for less than an hour. When we returned, the front door was still locked, the windows intact, nothing visibly disturbed, but inside, the air felt wrong, cooler and stale, like a room that had been closed for much longer than it had. One of the dining chairs had been pulled slightly away from the table, not enough to be obvious, just enough that I noticed. I asked my husband if he had moved it before we left. He said no. The kids hadn't been near the dining area all morning. I pushed the chair back in and told myself Milo must have brushed past it. That night, I found the pantry door open. I knew I had closed it. By the third day, Milo refused to enter the hallway alone. He would stand at the threshold, whining softly, until someone followed him, and even then, he moved quickly, his nails clicking against the floor, as if speed mattered. That evening, while the children played in the living room, I stood at the sink and noticed something move in the reflection of the window, not behind me, but inside the reflection itself. A tall, blurred shape passed across the glass, like a shadow that didn't belong to anything outside. When I turned around, the room was unchanged. My husband noticed my silence that night. I told him the house was settling strangely. He smiled and said older homes do that, even ones that look newer than they are. He sounded certain enough that I almost believed him. Almost. The first escalation happened during the day. I was folding laundry in the bedroom when I heard footsteps downstairs, slow and deliberate, moving from the living room toward the kitchen. I assumed my husband had come home early and called his name. There was no answer. The footsteps stopped. When I checked my phone, I saw a message from him, sent 10 minutes earlier, saying he was still at work. I stood very still, listening. The house fell silent again, as if it had corrected itself. That was the moment I began locking interior doors. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want to be dramatic. Mothers learn early how to shrink their fear so it doesn't spread through the house. The children noticed next. My daughter asked why the house made shadows even when the lights were on. She pointed to the corner of her room near the dresser, where something darker than darkness seemed to press against the wall when the lamp was lit. I told her it was just the way the light fell. That night, her toy box was open when I checked on her. The lid creaked softly, like it had been moved recently. The toys inside weren't dumped, just shifted, rearranged carefully. That word stayed with me. Careful things mean intention. My husband finally noticed something was wrong. When the lake-facing curtains were tied differently than he remembered, he asked why I'd changed them. I hadn't. We argued that night, not loudly. Quiet arguments are worse. He said I was tired, that the move had taken more out of me than I realized, that the kids were feeding off my anxiety. I wanted to tell him about the footsteps, the shadows, the way Milo refused to sleep unless he was pressed against my legs. Instead, I nodded and apologized. The house rewarded that silence. On the 6th day, we left for longer than usual, a family lunch that lasted nearly 3 hours. When we returned, every interior door on the ground floor was open. Every single one. The windows faced the lake, and for the first time since we moved in, the water wasn't still. Small ripples moved outward from the shore, as if something had recently stepped in and climbed back out. That night, I stayed awake long after everyone else slept. Around 2 in the morning, I heard it, not footsteps, but movement. Furniture shifting gently, a soft scrape. The sound of weight being placed and removed. I didn't get up. I didn't check. I lay there listening as the house moved around me, learning where everything was. When it stopped, Milo began to growl, low and continuous, aimed at the closed bedroom door. In the morning, the dining chairs were back where they belonged, aligned perfectly. The final escalation came without sound. I was standing in the hallway when I felt it, the sense of being watched from inside my own home, not from behind, not from a doorway, but from everywhere at once. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls, bending toward me despite the light. A picture frame lifted slightly from the wall, tilted forward, then settled back. Not dropped, placed. That was when I told my husband we were leaving. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I packed bags while he made calls, his voice tight but cooperative. By then, he had seen the shadows too. He didn't need convincing. Before we left, I walked through the house one last time, Everything was still. The lake was calm again. As I passed the hallway, I noticed the coat closet door open just slightly. Inside, our jackets hung neatly, except for one space, an empty hook at shoulder height. We moved out that afternoon. The house is still there. Sometimes I look it up online. It's always listed, always available. The photos never show shadows. Milo sleeps peacefully now. The children don't talk about the lake anymore. But sometimes, late at night, when my own house is quiet in a way that feels wrong, I think about how careful it was, how patient, and I wonder if it's still waiting for someone who won't leave when they notice.